I'm Julie Zenner, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North. Our focus is on manufacturing this week as companies find a way to navigate the economic distress brought on by the pandemic. We'll talk with the leader of Enterprise Minnesota and Greg Benson from Duluth's Loll Designs about the status of manufacturing in our region. And we'll hear from hopefuls in Minnesota House District 3B and 11B in our final Meet Your Candidates Before Election Day. These topics and more coming up on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. Dennis is off this week as we alternate hosting during the pandemic. Our show was recorded on Thursday afternoon. Well, we begin with some regional news headlines. With the election just days away, millions have already cast their ballots in early voting in Minnesota and Wisconsin. About 1.2 million absentee ballots have already been cast in Minnesota. That's double the total number of absentee ballots in all of 2016. Wisconsin was also seeing a record number of early votes cast, more than 1.1 million as of last week. There will be a new owner of the Superior Oil Refinery as Husky Energy agreed to a purchase by another Canadian oil firm. Calgary-based Cenovus Energy announced the all-stock deal on Sunday. The oil industry has been hard hit by a declining demand for fuel due to the pandemic. With unseasonably cold weather the past few weeks, warming shelters in Duluth will open up once again for the homeless. The shelter at City Center West will be open beginning November 4th. Any night the temperature drops to 32 or lower. Chum's Drop-In Center will also be open in downtown Duluth, and Superior's Ruth House has an overnight center already in operation. And Minnesota 6th Judicial Court Judge Sean Flaherty was honored this week for his work with the St. Louis County DWI Court. Flaherty served the 2020 Gary P. Olson Visionary Award presented by the Center for Alcohol and Drug Treatment. The judge was cited for his compassion and support for people struggling with addiction. And now October is National Manufacturing Month and a good time to get an update on how the pandemic is affecting local companies. WDSE's multi-platform producer Ramona Morozes talked with Bob Kill of Enterprise Minnesota about manufacturing in our region.
Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about manufacturing in Duluth, St. Louis County, and the state of Minnesota.
Can you share what all happens during October Manufacturing Month?
It's a great renaissance and recovery of manufacturing. For the last 10 years, it's just grown nationally and, of course, in Minnesota. Manufacturers open up their doors to students, to legislative, to interested parties, to other executives. We've facilitated a lot of visits, but this particular year, it's a little different because they're not opening their doors because we're not all essential to their business.
How has the pandemic impacted manufacturing in the Northland?
I think the biggest thing I could say is manufacturers have risen to the occasion. They maybe took 30 to 45 days to try to evaluate what is going to happen. What we've seen is about 30 to 45 days were spent to kind of get acclimated. And now they're trying to get as close to business as usual as possible because some industries are thriving, others are challenged.
What are some challenges Northland manufacturers are facing?
Well, I think they're facing, and we do the state of manufacturing, and I can't give away what's coming up on November 5th, but I can give you a hint that still finding employees is very difficult. Duluth is one example of a tough market finding qualified people, as you know. And it's part of it's because of some of the vibrancy of the manufacturing industry. So finding people still is a big challenge.
Why do you think it is such a challenge to find qualified workers?
Well, first of all, I think that the workforce itself isn't growing like the demand is. But the bottom line is, we've spent a decade sometimes telling young people that manufacturing is not a great career. Let me make sure that everybody understands it is a great career. 13% of the jobs in Minnesota, and it's 16% of the salary. So no other industry can talk about a 20% multiple of wage over hours. But we're really recovering in letting people know the value of a manufacturing job can turn into a career. And I'd say that, people sometimes talk about minimum wage. Manufacturers don't know what minimum wage is. No one starts in a manufacturing company anywhere near a minimum wage. It's way above that. And career advancement is very opportunistic because manufacturing has been rediscovered. Manufacturing and making something is cool again, and we just have to convince more individuals and more parents that that's the case. I think automation, we always think of robots. It's a robot. But I've been around long enough to know that a long time ago, we were told the computer was going to replace us. But you know what? The human still can do thinking that the computer can't. And the best quote I would leave you is automation complements the skill of the people, does not replace them. I can't, and I can take you to as many manufacturers like to have put in different kinds of automation. But automation often has to be tied to improving the process. Maybe it's a unique process that, is just becoming you're not able to find the individual that wants to do it, but the automation may allow that individual to now do a job that they do enjoy doing. So it tends to complement, but it isn't just a robot. It could be machining, specialized handling equipment, etc.
Can you please share how Enterprise Minnesota supports manufacturing in the Northland and why?
And our mantra is helping manufacturing enterprises grow profitably. So, we really think about, can we help them with strategy? Can we help them with revenue growth, finding new customers, new products? What's really been really good to see is the number of companies investing in leadership and talent during this pandemic of the last 7 months, as they start to realize that it really is connecting back to people. We help organizations get certain certifications that they need to get into new markets. So one I would think of is Van Technologies, right in Duluth, who's gotten an ISO certification so that they can pursue new markets. Just one example. St. Louis County has 215 approximately manufacturers. Most people wouldn't realize that number is that great. Of course, everyone knows of Cirrus, a wonderful company. But, right down the road from them is Clearwater Composites, which also is dealing in some very high-end composites, very interesting technology. Across the state, there's 8,300 manufacturers. But an interesting statistic in St. Louis County or across the state is that out of that 8,300, about 4,600 are under 10 employees. So that very small family business is vital to manufacturing. And oftentimes they're in a supply chain of a larger company like a Cirrus or like a Toro or Polaris or someone like that. So these very small manufacturers are really vital to our economy as a state, region, and oftentimes in small communities. The other thing is, you got great access. Manufacturers want to be located, years ago it was on a river for transportation of goods. Then it was railroads. Now it's the freeway system. And Duluth is not only situated to go east and west, but also to the lake if they're manufacturing something large. So that's important also. But the innovation and ingenuity of the manufacturers, very small, mid-sized, and up to large, has really been enjoyable to watch. It's been fun.
Thanks for joining us, Mr. Kill.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to chat about manufacturing. It's a passion. It's a passion of all the Enterprise Minnesota individuals.
Thanks to Ramona for that interview. And now joining us with more on local manufacturing is Greg Benson, the CEO and founder of Loll Designs, an outdoor furniture making company in Duluth. And welcome, Greg. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Loll is such an interesting story and a cool company. So for people who might not be familiar with it, give us the elevator speech.
Yeah, we're located in West Duluth, which, not too far from Spirit Mountain. We have 2 facilities there that we recently linked the 2 buildings together. They were right next to each other. Mm-hmm. So we're in about 70,000 square feet. We have 90 employees, roughly. And we make outdoor furniture is our primary business out of recycled plastic. And our market is really North America, primarily, United States, but Mexico, Canada, and we have some international distribution as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were right in the middle of a move, I understand, at about the point where the pandemic hit. How did that impact operations for Loll?
Yeah, that was tough. So we have 3 buildings in West Duluth, and we had an annex building, which was our original building where Loll had been temporarily operating some of the operation, and then we bought a building next to our headquarters. So it sounds a little confusing, but about the time we finished that building and were ready to move in, and did move in, was in February, and so we were only operating in this new space for the month of March, and then we were shut down for April. So, with the manufacturing operation and all the processes and equipment and the layout is really important. And so we really didn't get settled into this new space when we had to shut down. So it was definitely had an impact. And then we started up again May 27th is when things were, when we were able to open. We couldn't get the essential worker, or we weren't an essential business during that in April.
Mm-hmm. Did operations look significantly different because of COVID?
Yeah, once we reopened, it was all CDC guidelines. Taking temperatures, asking questions, wearing masks, social distancing, and the really nice thing about our new space is we had more room. And in manufacturing, you don't want to use more room than you need, but we were able to really space everybody out. We didn't do like staggered shifts or anything like that, but they really wanted to come back to work. They didn't want to sit at home. I think they were bored. And, people, we did, I should say, our office staff that was able to, that most of their work's on a computer, that were able to stay at home and work from home, they did that. And we kind of said they were keeping the engine running, with still working with our customers and discussing, business and how we were going to keep things going. And that was probably, about 20% of our staff. We didn't lay anybody off. The PPP loan really helped us as a business. We had applied for that. And that still, I don't know if that has still been cleared yet. There's some issues with that yet for a lot of businesses.
Mm-hmm. So with everyone stuck at home during the pandemic and even working from home since then, lots of folks have been working on home improvement, yard improvement. Yeah. Good thing for your company.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone knows we've all been outside so much more, and that's the place that we live at Loll, is outside with our product. And unfortunately, we're so busy. We were behind because of the move, then we were behind because of the COVID shutdown, and then the demand just went through the roof. So we've been behind ever since, really since this year started. Mm-hmm. And so I guess we've benefited from, restaurants setting up outdoor spaces and people at home setting up outdoor spaces. But we're just so busy, and there's only so much we can do. We're running 3 shifts a day, 5 days a week, and it's still, it's hard to keep up with the demand that we're seeing right now.
Has it been hard to find local workers with the skills that you need for the manufacturing that you do?
We sort of have, again, we have this office staff, and then we have a production staff. And recently we've hired like 2 customer service people, someone in HR, someone in accounting. And then we've almost always been hiring production and assembly. Mm-hmm. The skilled part of that in our assembly is the CNC operation, and those are the machines that cut all the parts. And that in that regard, we look for people that maybe went to LSC and have a degree in running those machines, or have experience running the machines. And then of course the office jobs, definitely we're looking for people that are experienced. And I think to find the right people and a good fit for the company, there's always a little bit of a challenge with that. But we've got a really great team, and people, they care about what they're doing. You know, we really pride ourselves in our low returns or customer complaints. And last year we shipped 60,000 pieces of furniture, pieces of items we made, and less than 1% of those we have issues with. Where there's missing bolts or hardware or something. So we really, back to your question on, is it hard to find people? I don't think so. But we definitely, the good people stick around for sure.
Are there challenges still in just the message out there for young people that there are good jobs in manufacturing to be had? Are you finding that there are barriers in that direction at all?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know that I'm in touch with anyone in that sort of that age group on a regular basis anymore. And I had mentioned to my wife recently that I remember Duluth when I was younger and people said, well, there's no jobs here. And in fact, we started our business away from Duluth and then moved it back to Duluth. But we definitely have a younger staff, and I'm one of the older people around the business, and I think a lot of the people working at Loll aren't from Duluth, so we're definitely keeping people in town.
You drawing people because of the lifestyle, or are you having to come up with some creative incentives to get people to come here and stay here?
We have great benefits. As an employer in this town, you have to be competitive with that. And we look at what other businesses that do similar manufacturing, their benefits. We also pay, we try to pay above what we should, a living wage. And then we have a profit sharing program. We have, paid time off, and just, I think we in a nice environment to work. There's almost everywhere in our space, whether you're in the shop or the office, you can see outside. And that's an important thing. That's not just an oversight. We intentionally changed garage doors so they're glass garage doors so people can see outside. And those are the little things that we do, that try to make it a nice environment to work in.
So we're talking about Manufacturing Month. Why is it important for an area like the Twin Ports to really have a strong manufacturing base to work from? Yeah,
even before I understood the Twin Ports, I came from the Twin Cities in 1988 is when I first moved up here. But you can just see that there's industry and manufacturing, and we're a made in the USA product. And I think whatever town you're in, it's just important. It adds something to that town. It's real. We're making something right here, and then we ship it out to around the country or the world. And not that other businesses are all valid for sure, but so many products are made, outside of the USA now. So I'm really proud of, and I think everyone that works at Loll, that we're making something here in Duluth and shipping that out. And there's, we get better at it all the time. So our skills are improved all the time.
Any advice or words of wisdom that you would offer local leadership to encourage growth in the manufacturing sector?
Yeah, I always plug the University of Minnesota. I'm an alumni from there, and that any help they can look at the manufacturing going on in the region and business and cater what they're teaching, and what students are learning. So when they come out, and if they want to stay here, which I think a lot do, it's a great place to live, that they have those skills that would be required to work here.
And what does the future hold for Loll, do you think?
Well, we're going to just keep making outdoor furniture. I've been wanting to make an outdoor booth since we started Loll, and so that is one product that's on the table now. We're going to make that. But I think just trying to expand our collection, just grow. We really want to grow more. I guess try to do more international business has always been something that we've strove for as well.
Well, Greg Benson, thank you so much for coming in. Good luck
Yeah.
as you move forward and as you work through the rest of the pandemic.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
you
having
coming
me.
in.
You're welcome.
Thank you. With just days to the election, we're wrapping up our special Meet Your Candidates coverage this week with a look at 2 Minnesota House races. First, we will hear from the candidates in Minnesota House District 11B, which includes most of Pine County, except for a couple of townships in the north and a portion of eastern Kennebec County. We'll hear first from DFL challenger Jack Frechette, followed by the Republican incumbent Nathan Nelson, both of Hinckley.
Hi, my name is Jack Frechette, and I'm running to be the next state representative from District 11B. My wife and I have a small farm here in Hinckley, and it's working on that farm that I've learned the principle of accountability. Right now, Republican leaders in the State House are only accountable to their own party, not the people that they serve. As our next state representative, my central goal will be to put the interests of the people of this district first, even when it means speaking against my own party. To learn more, please visit www.jack411b.com. Thanks for watching, and I hope to earn your vote.
Hi, I'm Representative Nathan Nelson, candidate for House Seat 11B. I've lived in the Hinckley area most of my life. It was after I'd moved away after high school that I realized what a treasure it was to grow up here. There's a lot of things I learned here, hard work, but one of the most important things was the value of what a neighbor is. It isn't just the person next door, but it might be somebody that lives on the other side of town, 20, 30, 40 miles away. This concept is something that treats each person as an individual. It opens the doors and opens the minds to discussion for what is the best for our area, for our state, and for our nation. Going to St. Paul, I take these same values and principles with me. My door is always open, I listen, and I hear the concerns of the people as they share. It is an honor to serve, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Finally, on our Meet Your Candidates coverage, we will hear from the candidates in Minnesota House District 3B. The district includes the extreme southern portion of St. Louis County, excluding Duluth, and the southeastern corner of Lake County, including the city of Two Harbors. We'll hear first from the Republican challenger Andrew Jelly from Hermantown, followed by Democratic incumbent Mary Murphy, also of Hermantown.
Hi folks, my name is Andy Jelly. I'm running for Minnesota House District 3B against Mary Murphy in this fall's election. I decided to run for office this year as I saw a great need for new leadership down in St. Paul. I'm a Hermantown resident and I have been in the insurance industry for 4 years. I am pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, and pro-union. I'm young and energetic and I would love to be your next representative. I humbly ask for your vote in this fall's election. Thank you and have a great day.
I'm State Representative Mary Murphy, District 3B. I've enjoyed having the experience that you have honored me with in St. Paul. You have voted for me many times over the last 40 years, and I appreciate that a lot. But my work is not done. I work hard for you. I work all during this pandemic that we're in now to this time period. It's very important that we have experienced people at the state legislature in St. Paul or in their home office behind the computer. I really appreciate your consideration. District 3B is the only growth area in the region. The suburbs around Duluth, up to and through Two Harbors, have grown. And with the 2020 census, I expect that the new redistricting that will take place will make severe changes, and our district is going to be changed. But I thank you for your support over the years.
Finally this week, the Minnesota Department of Health and local doctors are urging people to stay safe during Halloween this weekend. They recommend not gathering in groups indoors and to avoid door-to-door trick-or-treating. They advise instead to put individually wrapped goodies at the end of your driveway or yard for people to grab and go. And remember, a Halloween mask is not a safe substitute for a cloth face mask. Well, we're out of time this week, but you can keep up with Almanac North by following us on social media. You'll find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Visit the WDSE website for program updates, upcoming events, and more information about the station. And download the PBS video app for on-demand viewing of your favorite programs. Thanks to our guests and to the crew here in the studio. I'm Julie Zenner. Stay safe and have a happy Halloween.